Hey everyone, this is Joe, KF7MIX, here with the fifth video in a series of training videos for JS8Spotter, a companion program for JS8Call. This video is about the expect subsystem in JS8Spotter. I believe this is going to be a longer video, but for those who might find an expanded auto responder feature for JS8Call useful, then this probably would be worth your time. So I'm going to give you a reminder of the scope and of this video and the video series, as well as the gaps that we're trying to fill. And then we'll go into a deep dive of the expect subsystem. So reminder of the scope, this series of videos is for training on JS8Spotter. This is not for training on JS8Call. And this video in particular, video 5, is all about the expect subsystem. So if you don't already know a little bit about JS8Spotter, go ahead and go back and watch video 1. That's a good introduction, covers kind of the main features at a high level. And this video, it's not going to, unapologetically, this one's probably going to be kind of long, maybe boring. Feel free to fast forward. Feel free to set my voice to double speed or whatever makes you happy. Okay, so let's go ahead and introduce you to the expect subsystem. Let me show you. First of all, let's look at JS8Call just so you have some background as to what this is doing. If you go into your settings on JS8Call, General tab, and then Station sub-tab, you're going to see station messages. These are auto-responding messages that your station can store. Well, CQ is something that it's not an autoresponder. But things like the station info, there's two, station info and station status. When somebody sends the command info ? This is whatever you type there is what your station will send back automatically. If someone types in status ? Whatever you type here is what your station will send back automatically. Like I said, this is not a JS8Call training video, so if you don't understand that, go back and learn JS8Call, because that's a super useful thing. You can put your rig information, your antenna, as it suggests right here, whatever you want. We'll come back to that in a second. So the expect subsystem is in the tools menu of JS8Spotter. Just open it up here. And this expands that ability to have an automatic response to whatever commands that you want. Now all those commands are underneath one umbrella, and let me just show you real quick how that works. Just as an example, well, let's use the example that I've saved in here. You'll see in my info question, if somebody asks my station info ? They usually are looking for rig information, antenna, a location. This is what they expect to see, but my station will respond this: E ? rig or E ? commands. In my estimation, this right here tells them, oh, I was thinking I'd get their rig info, but if I want their rig info, I need to send them E ? rig or send E ? commands. Well, they might not know what that is, but I think it is more than obvious that that'll give them a list of commands. So in other words, if I were to go to a station that's on the air, I see W6TAB right here, I would say W6TAB E ? And right now I'm in the blind. I don't know what that station has, but it doesn't matter. I'm just going to assume I know that person, and we'll talk about that in a minute here. And I'm going to ask for the rig. Okay, that's how you format it. And then you hit enter and it sends that. And his station, if he were running JS8Spotter and had this as an expect statement, it would automatically respond. Okay? So let me just get deeper. This is a deep dive after all, so let's get deeper into what that means. All right, so this is my list of expect text and expect response. So the text that I expect to see decoded on the waterfall, and the text that I will respond with. So let's look at what you already saw when someone asks my station info ? It's going to give them two options: E ? rig, E ? command. So let's look at rig. I right-clicked on it to load it into the editor down here. So here's the text to expect. I'm expecting someone to say rig, always prefixed by E ? space. So E ? space rig. If they do send me rig, I will send back the rig and the setup that I'm currently using. I can change this if today I'm operating 30 watts, I can change that right now. So let's change that. Now the reply, so this is the text to expect, the text to respond with, and the reply to list. Asterisk means everyone. If you want to respond to groups, they have to be put in one by one. Otherwise, you're going to be sending transmissions in crazy amounts. Not the best idea. For emergency response Groups, you might want to put your group in there specifically. If not, that's okay. If you don't want, let's say I don't want, the group doesn't need to know about my rig, I'm just going to put an asterisk. In this reply to list, alternatively, you could just put people that you want to have that information with a comma. So I could say I only want to send my rig information to these 2 stations. Okay, for rig information, I don't care, so I'm going to hit everyone. Max replies means how many times am I willing to send out this response? Okay, I don't really, that's there to create some sort of limit or the ability to make a limit. Let's say I'm storing a message for someone and I only want to give them maybe 5 chances to get it. I don't want people randomly picking that up all day long. I can put in a limit there. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And so that's up here. So that's all at the basic level. You're saying if I see E?rig, I'm going to automatically respond to that station, directed to that station with this, or that group, with this text. Hopefully that makes sense. It's an autoresponder, just like your station automatically responds to info ? Or status ? With the text you've provided. Now your station can respond to E ? And then anything with any text you provide. So let me just show you a few more examples. You noticed in my info ? response, I listed E ? CMDS for commands. So what I've done here is I've manually set up a response to that will tell them what other commands they could use. Okay, so now because they can't see this table, even if it's operators that I know, I'm just giving them an easy way. This is kind of a way for anyone to explore my system. Anyone can ask for my info and they know to do that. And then if they go deeper and ask for those other commands, they'll see they can get my rig, my current weather conditions. This is for forms, which we'll go over in another video, and a URL to my website, which is right here. So they can, if they send me E ? URL, it'll send them back kf7mix.com, and I could put anything I wanted in there. There's no, I would expect these responses to be kept somewhat short, but it's because you don't want to go insane with your transmissions, especially automatic ones. But if you had a longer URL, you could put that in as well. So you see that with my commands, they could, let's load this up. I've got it set so anyone, as well as as this group right here, can ask for these commands. Okay. Now, assuming that you have these in here and people start using them, you see, let's take a look at this table. We have our expected text, our response text, and allowed call signs, which can be a longer list, and then sent to. So if I double click on one of these, I'm going to get information about who it's been sent to. Now the program changed at one point and it wasn't recording time and date before it is now. So it's going to tell me when I sent to who. All right, so you can kind of keep track. If you go into this window, you can see who you've sent to. And it's not entirely accurate, but in the status bar down here of the main program window, it should tell you that, oh, hey, there's something new in the expect subsystem. All right, so that's how it's been sent to. The count is how many times it's been sent. And this created was the last time you modified it. So we just modified this rig one a few minutes ago, which is why it's at the top of the list. Now the send now button is if you want to transmit blindly to another station. There's reasons for wanting to do that. For one, forms, which again we'll go over in another video, but if you wanted to send a form manually to someone without them asking for it, you could hit send now. Now what that's going to do is a manual send. I can say, who do I want to send this to? I put in the call sign, a single call sign or a group, and I would recommend sending it as a message. Then you have the benefit of the CRC and the ACK, and you know that it went through. Things that are sent as a message will be processed for forms just normally. I'm sending in my commands. I could do that if I wanted. Let me load this one up. Hit send now. Okay, there's my form. Put in the person I want to send it to. I want to send it as a message, and it formats this string for me. Now I can either copy and paste that into the main program, or I can hit the send button and it will transmit it for me automatically. All right, let's go back and make sure we're covering everything. So let's talk about the open-ended design. I mean, looking at this, you can probably already see that there are no bounds. There's no expectation. For example, commands, this is not built in. I had to put that in manually. Rig, I put that in manually. This is completely open-ended. And I manually went into JS8Call and put in my info, I put what I put there. It's entirely open-ended. It's up to whoever's using it to determine how they're going to use it. That is not super useful for the general public. I readily admit that. 99 point whatever % of the stations on JS8Call who might see my station have no idea that this is here and available and running unless they ask for info, which is not all that common. It's not that useful unless you're working in a coordinated group. If you're working in a coordinated group, if you have a group of operators, for example, a JS8Call chess club or an emergency response group, if you have coordination, then you can know what commands are available on your stations out there. Perhaps in the future, if this is useful to enough people, people will start to recognize what that E question mark means. But for now, it's not a secret. It's not obscuring the meaning of the transmission in any way. A lot of information is published on kf7mix.com. It's a public mode. Anyone can decode it and anyone can find that information. But right now, you really got to coordinate with your group. All right, so that's the open-ended design. I jumped forward to need to coordination, but let's. We talked about the auto-responder paradigm. That's just the fact that, like info question mark or status question mark, you have to ask for information. The station will automatically respond with information, and the way expect just expands that. We talked about a couple use cases, but we'll talk about a couple more. We'll just finish up talking about that need for coordination. Once again, this is not. Had it loaded twice there. This is not going to work by itself. It's not going to work with no prior knowledge. It's not going to work for random stations who are just out there goofing around unless you give them some clues as to how it works or they see someone else using your station. This is very much meant to be coordinated. So with that in mind, let's talk about use cases. Use cases and examples all require coordination, with the exception of, I showed you the use case of setting something like this in your info or status message. Okay, that's one use case. The use case is that someone may stumble across this and figure out how to use it. Not the best use case, but it could happen. I haven't had anyone stumble across it and use it yet. It's been on there for a little while. That's one use case. Another use case is that you have, let's just talk about emergency communications. You can apply this to a chess club or any other group that you have that you want to coordinate with. A net, for example, could use this sort of subsystem to have a more standardized response to net control for net check-ins. For example, you could have, well, we could talk about forms later, but let's do the net one first, and then we'll talk about emergency communications first. Let's say you participate in a JS8Call net, and you decide that, and we'll call the group @ net. All right, just to be very plain and boring. Now your net wants check-ins to be very coordinated. They want a little bit of information from you. Let's say it's a weather net. I'm not an expert on those, but let's say they're expecting to, they're going to send you the text E question mark WX net. All right, and they want you to respond with your current weather. Let's say minimum, maximum temperature, and weather state. So let's say my high today is 60, my low is 33, and it's windy. All right, they expect some sort of response like this from everyone on the net. And let's say you only want to send this response to your net. Well, let's call it WX net, why not? So if someone sends, and let's put in 99 for now. Let's hit save. Okay, so there we have it. It's saved, right? So in other words, if I had a WX net and net control sent something like this, okay, they would send it just like that. And let's look at my expect so you can compare it. So they're sending to this group WX net, which I have in my allowed call signs, E question mark space, that's always the prefix. WX net is the expected text, that's right here. My station will automatically respond with this, 60/33 and windy. So net control could send this out everybody on frequency at the right time for the net, their station would automatically send out that report. They wouldn't have to individually go to operators and say, well, what's your net report? Okay, oftentimes they'd have to check everybody in, and then, okay, does anybody have a report? Or everybody send your net report one at a time, or they'd even have to ask individual stations. KF7MIX, send your net report. With JS8Call, you can decode the whole waterfall at once. You have a lot of power for net control to get a lot of information from a lot of stations at one time. Once communication is established with maybe a signal report request by net control and everybody is at the right place on the waterfall, they could send something like this to get the data that they're looking for. So that's another use case, is for a net control operator to get data. And there's no reason why this, let's give another use case example here. Let's say WXNet wants to get your net report, but they want to know also if you have traffic, and they're going to ask everyone all at once, does anyone have traffic? And rather than everybody trying to respond at once and then having to interact back and forth, they could just go like this. Let's say I've got no traffic. Okay, just going to save that. All right, so then they can now, just to make this real clear, now they could send that for the next command, and then the stations who had this saved in their expect subsystem would automatically respond. Okay, so here's the net that it's directed to, which is right here in the allowed call sign group, E*space WXTraf. WXTraf, I'm going to answer no traffic. And the net control, if someone had a yes there, they could ask for that traffic. Or you could even have that traffic actually saved in another place here. And then, well, let's go ahead and do that. Let's say I did have traffic. Let me modify that. Yes, I have traffic. So now I'm going to say this one's just going to be called traffic, TRAF. These need to be kept below 6 characters. That's the format, the standard as it is. Text to respond to, let's just write, I got some storm damage Friday. All right. And again, this is only for my WXNet folks. All right. All right. So now let's go through the process. First, net control sent this, and I got this response from my station. Net control asked everyone for traffic. Everyone said no except me. My station said yes. At this point, net control is probably going to direct that to me directly instead of everyone and ask for my traffic. Okay, and then my system's automatically going to respond, storm damage Friday. Okay, so you see kind of how that might function. And again, you also see the absolute necessity of coordination here. So like standard operating procedures for a net, they would need to have this understood beforehand, just like any good net should have some understanding beforehand that this is how they operate. If they had that understanding and all the people had the tools in place, you could do a lot of communication with very little effort, without a lot of back and forth, save a lot of time. So that's kind of one use case. Let's go ahead and delete these and look at another use case. Make sure I'm staying on track here. Yep, we already covered everything except for use cases in the database. I'm spending a fair amount of time on this for a couple of reasons. First of all, this is my big chance to show you what the expect system does. Second of all, this is a very separate video from everything else, so I'm not wasting your time. If you're here, I'm assuming you want to hear about the expect system, and I'm trying to cover it as completely as I can. So let's talk about some more use cases. We talked about maybe how a net could operate. Let's talk a little bit about, we're not going to cover forms much here. Just know that forms will be covered in the next video, and forms gives it is what it sounds like. It's forms for JS8Call. They're very compact and they work with the expect system, but we'll go over that in the forms video. Apart from nets, other communications that you could do, you got the JS8Call chess group. I wish I knew more about that. I'm not a big chess player, but you could easily save moves for people. Let's say I was playing a game of chess with KE0DHO, and my move was up. I could save something called move, and I'm embarrassed to admit I don't even know how that format would go. So let's say whatever the move is. You chess people, you already know, okay? So type it in. However it's described, type it in there. Now only this player that I'm playing a game with is going to be able to get my next move. And whatever you want to put, this is open-ended design. However you want to coordinate that with the people you play chess with, coordinate. Go ahead and make an agreement of how you're going to store that for them. You could also store, chess players know that they can store these moves in the message system of JS8Call. The only problem with the message system is that it is not as robust as it could be. You've got to, and it has more steps. First of all, you have to query their station to ask if they have messages. Then you have to receive back a message ID. If the band is bad, you might have to do that multiple times. Then you have to query that station for that message ID and receive that message. There's multiple steps. Whereas in this case, I know I'm playing chess with this player. I can just query his station for that move and receive it. So that's just another use case. You could also put multiple moves. Let's modify this one. Let's say, because if you're playing multiple games of chess, you're going to have different statements right here. So let's say you and him have agreed that this is the game number is 1. So your next move is going to be in game 1. And then let's say you have game 2 going. Again, I apologize, I'm not a chess player, but I see JS8 chess people on here all the time. This is something they could totally use. Put in your move, and this is with another player. Okay, so you can have as many as you want there. That's another use case. Another use case is kind of like sort of a makeshift group messaging. Since we're talking about messaging, you can store messages on JS8Call. But there's no good way to get messages out to a group in JS8Call, and that's again another gap that this fills. In expanding the auto response system, group messaging is now possible. Okay, the way you might do that is you might have, let's say we'll go with our WXNet example. That's too long. Say WX message, okay? And my group, again, coordination, they would know that this is a group message for them, right? For anyone in the group. Now, I could limit that to users or not. We'll do another example in a second. Say we're going to miss the net next week. I don't know when the net is. Let's say the net is on 3/2, okay? In fact, let's shorten that because being brief is always good. All right. Let's say maybe my WX net only has 5 members, and I don't want this thing running all day long. Let's just say 20 opportunities for them to retrieve this message before it stops responding. Oops. Yeah. Okay. That looks good. All right. So now they know if they request a message from my station, if I have one for them, it'll show up if they ask that way. So in this case, anyone from the group could send this out into the air, and anyone in the group that has a message stored for the group, it'll respond that way. Now let's get a little more complicated. Let's say you've got a big group and you don't want one expect statement triggering 50 different message responses, right? Well, you have a couple options. First of all, instead of asking the group, they could ask me, do you have this message? Okay, then only my station will respond. But I would need to modify this. See, now now this will respond to any single call sign or anyone from WXNet. Okay, or I could put in a list of call signs there and the group net. But now this becomes a group message. Anyone from the net can individually come to my station and ask for a message and receive the message. So that's just a kind of simple use case for a message. But let's get even a little more complex because, again, open-ended design, you can do whatever you want with coordination. Let's say your group has decided that if let's say you're an emergency communication group, and your group decided that if you have a situation report, say SR, it's gonna be a yes/no. Okay. All right. And okay, now anyone from my group, let's say, can come to my station, or let's say they sent it to the group. They're asking basically, does anyone have a situation report available? Okay, I've answered no. Let's go ahead and answer yes. Okay, modified it. Now if situation report, yes. Okay, so someone go ahead, and I don't have to be at my station for this to work. This is all automatic. Now let's say they know that I've answered yes, and they have a list of three other stations that have answered yes. Well, now I'm going to go ahead and store it. Actually, that's just for fun. Call it SR1. I'm doing this in a way that has nothing to do with forms. I'm just writing grid down. Okay. It's an emergency response group here, and then, okay, I'm going to save that. So now they would query for this yes, for this situation report, whether or not you have one, yes or no. Stations that say yes, they're going to ask for SR1. That's just part of their operating procedure. Okay, so let's say they do that. And then mine would respond with grid down. All right, very basic example. Let's do another example. Let's delete this. And let's say situation report, instead of yes, I actually tell them the form number that I have filled out. 300 is for a situation report. Let me save that. Okay, so that's one way to do it. They could ask for SR. If I respond F300, that's a form, again covered in another video. But let's say that that's stored. It's not on this station right now, but this one is. So let's just pretend that's one. If it's stored on my station, then they know what to ask for. They know which form I used and how to get it. So based on the other training from the form video, which you'll see shortly. But there you have a few different use cases: group messaging, JS8 chess, net control operator, gathering more data faster, as well as communications for forms. And the sky's the limit. Whatever you and your group decide to do with this system, it's open-ended. All you have to do is architect what you want, so that everyone in your group understands the flow of communication and what needs to be stored and how, and you're set. You've expanded the capabilities of JS8Call greatly. Finally, we'll just take a very quick, brief look at the database. The expect table, it's pretty straightforward. Here are the fields. You'll notice that the text that you're going to expect is unique. This is by necessity, obviously. You can't have one text give multiple responses. One text needs to give one response. So you need to coordinate design your expect and responses accordingly. And then just to browse that data for fun, that's just some of these that I have stored in a test database. It's all very clear, but if you wanted to, another thing you could do as a group is you could create a database table for your group's expect statements, and you could send them out to people and they could put it in their database through a program like this. Let's say you had a very complex set of organization and you didn't want people to type it in all manually. You could distribute it as a database file, and they would automatically have all of this over here when they loaded the program. And that's about it. That's the expect subsystem of JS8Spotter. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comment section of the video or send them directly to me, Joe, KF7MIX. My contact information is on qrz.com.